Hi everyone, and welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial, which is section 4 or part 4 of my Elastic Cloud tutorial, I'm going to talk about Grok plugin. In this section 4 of the tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the Elastic Cloud Console to test and map out the Grok patterns, right? To filter out and map the raw logs to something that you would use to do your analysis in Elastic Cloud. Okay, now let's do a quick recap. If you remember, we store our logs from the previous session into /temp/log/Meraki MX. Okay, you can see that logs are still there. All right, I have simulated some logs today, so I'm going to remove that. So what we're going to do is to only try and map the logs for the flows for this session first to make it easy, right? So let's do a cat. What you want to do is to copy all the raw logs, all right, and then paste it into a file, right, for us to upload to the Elastic Cloud Console. So I've already copied the logs onto a file. So once you get into the Elastic Console, from the home page, you can actually use the add your data function to quickly test out the Grok capability. So in the add data section, go to upload file. Okay, then select and drop the log files into the Elastic Cloud, right? So it supports a couple of format, right? For this tutorial, since we have started with using the raw log format, we're going to use this, right? So click on this, right? I've already pasted my log files into a text file. I'm going to just click open, and you can see that the logs are all imported over here. So out of the box, Elastic is able to automatically map, right, the log samples that I have uploaded into a sample Grok pattern. So we're going to use this pattern and tune from there, right? And then when we go into the next section on how do we import index, we'll use the custom pattern that we have done as the base for the import later. So once we've gotten the Grok pattern, right, we can go back and modify our configuration file. Okay, so if you've forgotten where the configuration file is stored, is default is stored in /etc/logs, /etc/logstash / pardon me. So let's look at the config. I've done a few tests, but the one that we are using is the Meraki MX config that we did in our last tutorial. Okay, wrong spelling. Okay, so I've commented out the rest of the logs collection just to make sure that it's not too noisy and we can see what is happening. And then, what we want to add here is really a new section called filter, and then add in Grok. And for a start, we are going to use match. There are other functions that Grok has, such as add fields, mutate, and stuff that you can use later, right? So what we're going to do is to match the message part of the logs that we're collecting. Okay, I've already did some modification here. So let's delete it and then paste in the. Okay, let's copy this, paste this into. Right. Couple of things to take note, right? The logs that we have added in will map up the whole logs or the raw log that we have added in, right? So by default, Elastic is able to already map the message and the address. So what we want to do is to look at the message part of the logs, right? So and then then match and map the rest of the field. So take note, right? Default, without specifying any tag, right, it will automatically assign fields or tags such as field 2, field 3, right, to match the field, right? So we'll customize this a little bit later, so it makes a little bit more sense. But once we've done that, uh, copying the filter, right, or the Grok patterns, and pasting it here, we should be able to get this default mapping going. Now, before I save, right, let's do a okay, let's do one thing, right? I want to show you the before and after, right? So let's do this. Okay, and then let's save this first. So now we're gonna launch the command, right? So if you've forgotten the command is stored in /user /share logstash bin, and the command that we're going to run for this test is logstash -f followed by the config file, right? And then if you remember from my last tutorial, config.reload automatically means that we do not need to restart the process um, when we change the configuration on the right here later. Okay, so once that's done, let's launch it. Okay, we should see, okay, once it's launched successfully, what you will see that by default, right, you will see that, let's go back here and see, this is like one log pattern, right? So by default, you can see that uh, Elast or Logstash is able to identify that the host that is sending the logs over is 33.88 in this case, right? And then it is able to map the timestamp, right? And then the message part is the one that uh, we have not specified any patterns or filter that is available in Logstash, right? As of this video, there aren't any that is done specifically for Meraki flows. There are patterns and plugins that are available for Meraki security, right? So since we are not having any security events, uh, and flows is not mapped, that's why I'm showing you how to map flows in this tutorial. Okay, so effectively, if you look at what we have here, right, in terms of message, it's mapped to automatically map into the Grok patterns that I specify. So now that it's done, let me just activate this and we can see the difference, right? Okay, want to keep let me keep this section here so we can see the difference with the new Grok pattern that we have done. So you can see that the minute we've done the mapping, right, you can see that, okay, so you can see that with the mapping done, right, we have mapped the message over here into a couple of fields, right? Field 1, 2, and 3, which maps into the event type, version of the event, and then the timestamp. All right. And then we have also map source. This is there, which is the source IP address, and then source port and destination port. All right. And then we have not done anything to pattern 0 or all. Okay. So with this, you can quickly see what are the fields that are being mapped, what are the fields that are not being mapped. And at the same time, right, if you need to add in like the host name of my Meraki MX, and if you want to, look at the pattern which is in Meraki context, I believe 0 or which is allowing uh, any to any, right? To all, right? The traffic is allowed, right? Going out. Uh, or 1, 0 and 1. So the pattern here 0 and 1 means allow or deny, right? So you might need to check out whether 0 is allow or deny again. Just can't remember, but we'll figure that out as we go along. Okay, but if we want to add in the DPS ESGMX04, a few ways we can do it. We can go back here and manually do it. The other way that we're going to try first is really to go back to um, the patterns here, right? And then we can look at adding on the host name, um, etc. So you can see from the mapping of let me just pull out this so it's easier to see. Okay, let's take a look, right? So what happens is that we have mapped the first three field. Okay, this is 0. If you notice on the patterns later, you will see that the host name and the name of the flow is being ignored, right? So you can see that it's being ignored by dot asterisk slash question mark dot asterisk slash. We can change this if you want into um, host name. So okay, where we are going is the default patterns that are available already in Logstash, right? For Grok patterns. So we can come over here and look for predefined map out, right? So there's host name is already defined. So we can go back to Elastic Cloud, right? And then let's do override. Okay, now what we are going to do is to specify the host name. Okay, the pattern is already mapped to host name, and then what we're going to give it is host name. Okay, and then let's apply this. It will tell us that it is file structure cannot be determined. That means that I have did I upload the URL logs? It shouldn't be the URL logs. Okay. Okay, sorry. I've changed the wrong one. Host name. Let's apply this. Doesn't. the Grok pattern. Okay, the host name does not allow dash. Mm, okay, seems that the host name syntax does not allow us to do that. You can tweak and change later if you want, but let's do this. Instead of using host name, let's use this %user followed by host name. That should do the trick. And yes, and you can see that we have mapped the host name, right? Okay. Let's see host name. As you can see that the value of host name is being mapped. Okay, that's a good way to test out, right? So we have map host name. Let's hop back and see if there's less. So the type flows, right? You can put it in to, identify flows and the type of logs that's coming in, right? But for this tutorial, we're not going to do that. So now let's go in here and we can always look at find, but dot question mark. Oh, okay, so we're gonna change it to %user host name, right? Then let's see. Okay, we're gonna run the logs again. All right, this time around, let's launch this. And you can see that now we have added in host name, right? So this is just to give you an idea on how you can easily create custom mapping using Grok pattern, right? It's actually very useful, especially when you are trying to integrate multiple log sources, and for those log sources that are not that has not already been identified by Elastic Cloud, or you want to um, update some of the log structure, change the pattern for analysis. So Grok pattern is one of them that you can use. There's dissect and a few other filter that you can use to map your logs, raw logs into fields that you can actually use in Elastic itself, right? So that's very much for this section of the tutorial, right? It's just a sample of how you can use Grok filter, right? So do spend some time, right, to look at the official documentation in terms of using Grok or dissect and the Grok pattern, how it's done. It gives you the basic. Um, and one of the few things that you want to look at is uh, the regular expression. There's various types of regular expression out there. Elastic or Logstash uses the oniguruma expression, right? So you can come in here and take a look at what does the individual um, syntax means, right? So it's a good document to go through. It's not a very long document. It helps you to create your custom mapping, right? And of course, we've gone through that previously, right? In terms of Logstash patterns, what are the available predefined pattern that is already mapped, right? So if you have firewall logs, right, especially like Cisco firewalls, right, they have a whole list of predefined uh, patterns that are already defined, right? So I think it's pretty much a good start, right? Elastic being a open source, the range of logs available, you know, are not might not be as much as the paid version or the commercial version, but there's a reason why it is open source and it's free, right? But more importantly, it is not difficult to learn how to create custom logs. And as the community and as the adoption increases, right? Hopefully, as time goes by, you don't really need to, continuously do custom mapping. And even to be very frank, right? Even for commercial product out there, as vendors changes their log formats, add in new fields, right? Uh, Tweaking with logs is not it's always going to be there, right? Or at least for a very long time. Now, of course, Elastic and a lot of the log collectors out there or the search engine out there is also adding in AI, learning into their solution, right? So, hopefully in the future, a lot of the machine learning and AI will help us to reduce the need to do a lot of this custom mapping, right? Okay, so with that, let's just do a quick uh, relook at what we have done, right? So in terms of the configuration, all we have done in the config part is really adding in the filter Grok match function, right? So this allows us to do a quick custom mapping using Grok. And this is useful and important, especially when we start to import logs into Elastic Cloud or Elasticsearch, right? And that is where, being able to tidy up or tune your logs will help in a lot of the analysis, whether it's from a observability part, in terms of looking at system health, performance, you know, s- quality of service, all those things, or even into the Elastic SIEM for threat analysis, being able to get yourself familiarized with Grok and, being able to tweak and tune some of the logs format as well as adding on text, right? It will definitely help in the search and the SIEM capability in Elastic Cloud. Okay, so with that, thank you so much, for watching and stay tuned for the next session.